I'm Nigel Short, and this is the shortcut to chess mastery. Unfortunately, there isn't really a shortcut to chess mastery. It requires a lot of work, but hopefully these 15 hours that you will spend looking at tactics will help you on your way. I have long been convinced that studying tactics is the best way for the vast majority of players to improve their game. Many years ago, I worked as the national coach of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And one of my top women players, her name was Shirin, she asked me what she could do to improve her game. And I was going back home at that time, and she had some free time on her hands, a month or two. And like many players, she was convinced that her openings were the cause of all her difficulties in chess. This is usually wrong. I said to her, Shirin, that your openings, of course, they could be better, but they're not bad at all. And I said, and you have a good understanding of the game. But it seems to me that relative to your strength, your tactics are weak. And what I prescribed for her was a course on chess tactics. I just said, work on these by yourself over the next month. And she did that. And she worked for about 60 hours over the next month, 2 hours a day. And the next tournament she played, and this was a player with a rating of 2070, she narrowly missed the men's international master norm. She made a 24:30 performance in her next event. So with a relatively short amount of studying, she raised her game by several hundred points. And this is really the idea of this course. I'm not going to make you all grandmasters overnight, but hopefully with studying this, you will find a greater appreciation for chess tactics, and you will see also some unusual themes. Attack. This is almost the most important chapter out of the whole course. In order to win games, you have to deliver checkmate, or at least capture a lot of your opponent's pieces and force them to resign. So attacking is a vital part of the game, and knowing how to do this well is going to bring you many points. The first game in my attacking tactics chapter is a game against Jonathan Penrose from the British Championship in 1977. It was a very important event for me. I became easily the youngest ever qualifier for the British Championship, breaking Jonathan Mestel's record. He was 15 years old when he participated, and I was 12. So this game was played in the third round, and it was the game which attracted a lot of attention, at least nationally, because of course Jonathan Penrose had been the 10 times British champion. So here is how it began. E4, and we had a Sicilian. In those days I didn't play open Sicilians, and that is a bit of a shortcut. Open Sicilians require a very substantial amount of knowledge, but I used to play these sidelines to save myself a lot of energy. So this is a sort of a bad Kopek system. I don't know whether a good Kopek system is any good. The bishop on d3 is not that well placed, but it temporarily protects the e-pawn. In fact, black can obtain a good game now by the simple expediency of playing d5. But instead he played in a different way. b6, not a bad move in itself. And bishop a6, which is a little bit odd because he's exchanging off that clumsily placed piece on d3. So naturally I took. And here I played my first little tactic of the game, d4. Ostensibly blundering a pawn on e4, but this can't be captured for the following reason. After knight takes e4, white plays queen e2, and there the queen attacks both knights, and it's the maxim of Dr. John Nunn. He says loose pieces drop off, and this is a pretty good example of that. Black has two loose pieces, undefended pieces, and they can't both be protected at the same time. Queen d3 achieves the same effect, by the way. So obviously my opponent wasn't going to do that, so he played c takes d4 instead. And I took with the knight. It's an interesting decision. Taking with the pawn is not a bad move, but I took with the knight. And now I think my opponent didn't react in the best way. He went bishop e7, which is a bit too provocative. And here I had this advance, and queen g4. And this is a good move, attacking g7 and forcing a weakness. So we've had one mini tactic so far. Here is another mini tactic. If black castles, then bishop h6 is pretty much a standard idea. Threatening mate in 1 forces g6, and then the bishop can take the rook. So black should avoid that very clearly. Instead he played g6. It was actually an argument for doing something else, like even king f8 is possible, but he went g6, and now bishop h6. So I stopped him castling. Knight c5, bringing that offside knight into the game. I went c4. And black now blundered with f5, and it's the first really very important moment in the game. And here I missed a rather elementary win. Have a stop, think about it yourself. Where should my queen go? Do I capture en passant, or where should my queen go? I chose incorrectly. I chose queen f3, whereas I should have played the very obvious move, queen h3. And after knight c7, white can play bishop g7, followed by queen takes h7. And this is leads to a complete catastrophe for black. He can slightly improve his play, but basically he is losing material. So this is a chapter on attacking tactics, and this is one which I missed, and not a very complicated one at all. But interesting also that Penrose missed it in the game. So I dropped back, knight c7, brought out my knight to its most natural square. And here I think Penrose wanted to exchange off the queens with queen b7. So I drove him back with this maneuver. And the knight on b7 is now very, very poorly placed. He brought it over to evict my my bishop on h6. And I went for a tactic which I don't think is wasn't necessarily the best way for me to play. I have many simple and good moves, but I went for some idea with knight b5. So I was playing for tricks. Takes, takes. And now the threat is queen takes a8, followed by knight c7 check, which will fork these pieces. So also knight c7 check is an idea immediately. And this is, I think, why Penrose went knight c6. Got many, many good moves here. Rook e1 is a very good move. I went bishop g7 and bishop f6, perhaps not the best, but I think good enough. Knight d6 check is good. I've got many options. I took here, and now black has a choice. Positionally, strategically, it looks as if he can take, and he can take a pawn. But the chronic weaknesses of his black squares start to show after a move like queen f4, threatening queen takes c4, if black then plays b5, queen h6, and the queen penetrates decisively on the king's side. So in some ways, black has an excellent position. If the queens and the rooks were off here, you know, black would be doing very well indeed. In fact, he would be winning. But he isn't, because his king is exposed and white is penetrating on the king's side. So after king e7, I give knight d6. This is threatening the queen with check. That's why he moved. Queen g3, protecting for the moment this pawn on e5. And if he takes, there are some other little tactics now. I can play, for example, rook d1, and if knight f7, I can contemplate a move like knight takes f5 with a discovered attack on his queen on c7. So here are little ideas. He played g5 instead, for the moment keeping me out. And my queen came into the attack against this very vulnerable pawn. He took, and now the rook comes into play. In order to play good tactics, I'll state the obvious here, that you should place your pieces on active squares. So this is very important. Rook on an open line, not a completely open line, but protecting the knight, and leaving the e1 square available for the other rook. Black's king is terribly exposed. He now tried to defend with this move, and I have a variety of choices. I went rook e1. It actually was already very strong to take on h7 check, but I delayed it a move. The knight retreated, takes, and this is the moment where I've already missed one very, very strong and not too difficult tactic. And here I found, again, it's not that difficult, but it's rather pretty, this combination which wins material and sends me to a winning endgame. 98 check is the idea. Forking his king and his queen after black takes, which is obliged to, rook takes d7, and now there is a crushing threat of queen f7 mate, and of course he's also threatening the queen. So rook e7 takes, and after this necessary defense by black, he is left hopelessly down on material in this endgame. An exchange and a pawn is a huge amount of material. So Penrose tried for the next few moves to put up some resistance, but it was all in vain. Rook c8. I could play rook b7, maybe is more precise. I went rook a7. Takes. So he's temporarily put some glue on his position, but white advances like this. And there are actually many ways to win. Rook a7 check looks like a very good way to win, followed by a6. I didn't play in the best way, but it was good enough because the position is so winning. Black can't move his knight. I'd make a safety move, clearing the back rank. He advanced, and now I connect my rooks, and after this maneuver it's all over. He went forward, and the rook crashes into the game, and it's only a matter of time before I mop up his pawns on the king side, and therefore my esteemed opponent resigned at this point. This next game is from the same event, my first British Championship, and after getting off to a blinding start with 2.5 out of 3 points, I then hit the rocks. I was a young, inexperienced player. I lost several games in a row, and very foolishly, although it wasn't my decision, I was driven to London from Brighton on the free day to play in a simultaneous exhibition against Anatoly Karpov. That didn't help. I lost to Karpov. I came back to the British Championship and continued losing. So instead of having rest and recuperation down in Brighton, I was dragged a considerable distance for a very lengthy game against the reigning world champion. Not a good idea, so that's general advice to you. So towards the end of the event, I wasn't doing that well, but I managed to win following nice game. It's not terribly difficult. It's against Glenn Fleer, who of course later would become a grandmaster. And began with the Spanish opening. And this is a line which I very much favoured at the time. It was another shortcut. It was something recommended by the Lancashire junior coach, Mike Conroy. And I must say it served me very well because in those years that I was playing it, because not many people knew how to handle this immediate advance. Takes, that's a good move. And here I believe b5 is an excellent move for black, giving black a very comfortable game. But I think this one was more favoured at that time, and I advanced. Knight e8, and this is has been played by a lot of respectable players, but clearly the knight is a bit uncomfortable on the square because it doesn't have any options. I now played in gambit style. There are other moves here, but gambit style is not bad. It's c3, just sacrificing a pawn in order to develop my pieces. And I'm firmly convinced that the only way to deal with this gambit is to accept it and to suffer a little bit after this. But Glenn declined it with d3, which leaves him with all the drawbacks of his knight on e8 and none of the advantages. So I took, obviously, and here I played very simply. I just decided to remove that defending knight and to develop my pieces. And clearly, if black is to untangle here, his knight on e8 is the piece that has to be brought back into the game. So a sensible way to play would be something like d5, followed by g6, and bringing the knight to this square. Instead, he came up with an erroneous plan, bishop g4, and I continued developing, and the queen came here, logical enough, taking control of some dark squares. I played a slightly strange move here. I played rook d1, which is a self-pin for that knight, but it has some merit. And here Fleer blundered with the move f6. So you can stop and take a few seconds to look at this, and you'll realize, I hope, that this has an obvious tactical flaw. I played e6, and this is driving the queen away. It's either that or it has to be accepted. He took it, but now he gets into a terrible difficulty down the e-file. I played queen e4. If the bishop moves, then obviously queen takes the other bishop. So king f7 was necessary, and now my knight came into the game, attacking the first bishop. After bishop d5, nice enough move, queen h7. And at this point, the game is really over. It's only 18 moves. I have a very direct, very elementary threat, and he can't do anything about it. Basically because he overlooked this, all because he overlooked this attacking idea with e6. Now he threatens mate in 1, which is easily parried with g3. After he would want to play a move like queen g6, but this of course loses to rook takes e7 check. It's very, very easy playing tactics when your pieces are on the right squares. So he can't do that. He played instead bishop d8, preparing to play queen g6, but now he's a move too late, knight f5, and if, at this point he resigned, if queen g6, knight h6 check, anyway, wins the queen and wins the game. So it was a simple little game. One I like. It's true my opponent didn't play that well, but it was a nicely executed finish.